All right, that's better. In today's video, I'm gonna teach you how to light your videos to look as cinematic as possible. So for this setup, I'm going to be doing just like a talking head lighting setup. This is where you see me talking about nonsense, rambling, complaining about things. And how I have my office set up right now, I'm really able to get like 5 or 6 different setups within here and really make the most out of this small space because it's really not that big. But for today, I'm going to be using my favorite setup, which is the computer in the background kind of to the left of frame. I always start with the setup. I get my framing set up because this is how the final image is gonna look regardless of the lighting. So I'm gonna start with this. I'm shooting on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Let's get this set up. Once we do that, I will talk a little bit about the lighting. All right, so let's get started with this frame. I always like to start with getting the camera level and make sure that all the vertical lines are actually vertical. So I'll use the grid on my monitor and just get it as best as I can. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm gonna do that. And what I want is I don't want to see too much of this desk on the left. It's because that wall isn't really dressed up. It looks kind of gross over there. So I'm gonna zoom in and go to about here. So that way I can be just to the left of the frame. I want to be to the left of the desk. All right, so we're boomed too low. I'm gonna go up a little bit. Let's see how that looks. And it looks good. I'm usually about here. That looks good. I just want to clean it up. So we are going to have to do something with this space because we're going to see this desk a little bit. So I'm going to make sure to set that up. All right, so this is looking pretty good. We'll fine tune it a little bit more once we get the lighting set up. So now let's talk about the lighting and what we're going to use for this setup. For all of my videos in the office, I use this Godox SL60. It's a really awesome budget LED light, comparable to the Aperture 120D. Then I have the newer softbox with a grid on it. And what the grid does is helps contain any of the spill, so it kind of shoots the light more directional while keeping it nice and soft. Next up, we have this newer LED panel. It's a 1x1 battery operated LED panel that goes from 3200 Kelvin to 5600 Kelvin. And then we have this Yongnuo light wand, which I've had for a couple years, and I usually use this to cast light onto different parts of the office that are underexposed. So really in total, we're only using 3 lights. This will be my key light, which is shooting onto me. We'll have this as a hair light, and this will kind of be lighting the background, filling in any sort of cracks that we need to fix. And then I also have this right here, this reflector with a black side. I'm gonna use this over here because I like to light my videos with a little bit of negative fill on my face, and I'll explain that in a little bit of how I set that up. Now that we're ready to set up lighting, I'm switching this over to the big monitor because I like to be able to see myself on a larger screen. It's just gonna help me dial everything in. It helps me see that I'm in focus. You can see that it shows the grid, the focus peaking on the green. I don't know why I'm pointing on my screen. You can see the focus peaking right here, so that tells me when I'm in focus. All right, so one of the biggest things to get a more cinematic look in your videos is using negative fill. This is a Hollywood style lighting technique that you see in a lot of films where the side of your face is actually not lit compared to the other side. So camera side of the face has what's called negative fill. It's underexposed. The lighting's coming from the other side of the face. Now, it's tough to do that when you're face on perfectly towards the camera. So what I usually do is shift my body here so that I'm still talking to camera, but my body is facing towards the left of the lens so that you're seeing more of this side of my face, not just perfectly squared off. And that way I'm able to light from up here and throw the bounce here and get a little bit of that dramatic look. So let's start with my key light. We're gonna move this over to here. This is gonna act as our key light, which will be our main light. And that looks pretty bad. I'm gonna drop it down to about 70%. All right, so I'm liking how this is looking so far, but it does look very dramatic. It looks like there's one light coming down on me, which obviously there is in the background. is just too underexposed. So one of the biggest things too that I like to do in my videos is treat the background the same as you treat your subject. So we're gonna spend a lot of time lighting me. I also wanna make sure that I'm spending some time lighting the background because I want this background to look just as spruced up and nice as the subject. So we'll get to that, but first, now that we have the key light on, we're gonna throw a hair light up. All right, so now we're gonna add the hair light. I'm gonna throw this basically directly over me, a little bit to the right side of the back of my head. And how I typically like to light this, and it's kind of a standard procedure, is when you have your key light here, you want to essentially cross with your hair light or your edge light. So we're not gonna light from the same side as this light here. We're gonna light from the opposite side just to separate myself from the background a little bit and kick a little bit of light on the top of my head, and you're gonna notice a big difference once I add this. Now this is balanced to 5600, this is balanced to 5500, so this is gonna be a little cooler of a light. And if you're not familiar with how color temperatures work with lighting, essentially the higher the Kelvin in the light means that it's gonna be colder, so how you see it is going to look cooler, but in camera, when you put your color temperature to 5500, it's gonna be balanced. So I'm gonna use this boom stand here so that way I can prop the light up, hang it over my head without the stand getting in the way. Now this is where the importance of setting up your frame first comes in handy. Pretty much any time you're on a set, whether it's a professional shoot or a personal shoot, you're gonna wanna set up your frame first and light around it, because you need to be able to move lights around and know when your stand is in frame. So when you have a gaffer lighting for you, they will be moving in a light and the DP will be looking at the frame, letting them know when they need to move it out, getting the lights as close as they can without being in frame. So if you were to try to light yourself before you frame up the shot, it's just gonna give you issues once you start dialing everything in, because you're gonna be working around the lights instead of the camera, which is the most important part overall. All right, so as you can tell already, this hair light really makes a big difference. It separates me from the background. Let me show you what it looks like with it off. So now we're back to it off. I'm kind of just falling off too much on the side. You can tell it looks very sourcey. So I don't think I'm going to need to throw the bounce to get more negative fill, because I'm pretty happy with how this looks. But just to show you, if I were to bring this in, as you can see on this camera, if I were to bring it in, here it is without it. And the closer I bring it in, now we have a really dark, really dramatic look. I bring it away and it lights up a little bit more. So I'm gonna go without it because I don't want it to be too dramatic. Again, we're not lighting a drama, we are lighting a YouTube video, so I do want it to look cinematic but still realistic and more of an interview style setup. So I'm happy with how this looks. We've got the key here, we have the hair light back here. Now let's start dressing up the background and let's figure out how to make that look just as nice as this does. All right, so now we're going to start dressing the background, and to start, I'm going to play around with the LifeX bulb that I have over here, and it's just connected through my phone, so I can turn it on and off with my phone. I can adjust the color temperature, make it warmer, make it cooler, and I can adjust the brightness. So I'm gonna play around with this, but first I need to turn this computer on, because the whole point is to have this kind of playing in the background as if I'm just working in my office. So let's grab my phone here, and that's with it off. Turn it on, you can see it adds quite a bit to the scene. I think going too warm doesn't really do much for me, so I'm gonna go to about 4,000 here. That's at 100%, let's drop it down. All right, let's keep it at 100%. Now, the only downside is back here, it really is adding a lot to that. So that's fine, I'm gonna live with it. Now we need to do something about this business over here, because that is really messing with my vibe. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this area right now because I haven't added prints or shelves or whatever I'm gonna end up doing up here, so it looks kind of bare. So to make it look somewhat decent, let's do that. Just a nice, cool light. We'll light up that back area. I wanna match this light back here with the red on the wallpaper, so let's see if this will do anything. Maybe that'll look a little better. Yeah, it's kind of cool. All right, so this is looking really good. I'm almost there with everything, but I do want to play around with the background a little bit more. And what I'm gonna do is use this last light that we have to kick a little bit under the background here. So I'm just gonna play around with this, see what we can do while still making it look natural. That's the thing with lighting, is you don't want it to look super sourcey. You don't want everything to look like there's a light kicking on it. You want this to look really like we're playing with the practical light here. We want this to kick in and just make it look like this light is illuminating everything back here. All right, what I'm gonna do is make this a little bit warmer so that it matches just a little bit there. All right, and I think that's good. Oh yeah, that just helps a little bit to brighten it up right over there, just a little bit, nothing too crazy. We do want it to look natural and not look like there's a huge light source hitting it. So I'm pretty happy with that. It looks much better. So now I'm going to go through each light and show you how it all ties in together, because you're probably used to seeing how it looks right now. So I just want you to see the before and after and how everything plays a part of the whole scene. All right, so here we are with the original shot. All we have is the key light lit on me. Everything else is off except for the computers. Now it does look good. It looks very dramatic and cinematic, but there is no character to the shot. There's nothing lighting the background. The background just looks too underexposed and not interesting whatsoever. And for what I'm shooting and what I'm lighting for, this just doesn't make sense for it to look so dramatic. Now we add the hair light, which is going to separate me from the background just a little bit, and it's also going to expose the side of my face just enough to where there's a nice negative fill, but it's not totally falling off. Now we add that first practical light in, which is gonna be the main practical for the scene. That's lighting the desk, and that just brings up the overall background. Now you're starting to see a little bit of character back there. You'll also notice that I added a little bit of tape to the top of the lens just to get rid of that flare that was coming in from the top of the hair light. We add the LED light in the back just to play with some of the colors and kind of tie everything together. And then finally, we add that last LED light just to kick onto the background and kind of play onto that practical. And this is how I like to light my talking head videos. Now, of course, there's no wrong way to light something as long as everything's exposed and it looks right to you. Then use your creativity and light how you like. This is just my personal preference. I think that lighting with the negative fill and kind of turning my body and talking to camera gives it a bit more of a cinematic look. I think it gives it more depth to the shot overall. I'll be sure to leave a link to all of these lights in the description so that way you can check them out if you're looking into getting some lights for your setup. These were, again, very cheap. 200 bucks, maybe a little less for this key light softbox setup. These little LEDs back here that I use are also very affordable. But that's gonna be it for this video. I hope that you're able to follow along a little bit and you were able to take notes and dial in everything that's going to help your videos. If it did help and you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit me up in the comments, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. Until the next video, I will see you all later.